Hello and welcome to the daily chapter reading of The Gift of Anger by Iron Gandhi. Know your own worth. Many people today have a cartoon image of my grandfather as a saintly man who gave up all material goods and wore as little clothing as possible. But here's the surprise. He actually understood the value of money as well as anybody. He believed that economic strength was a key to Indians' freedom because he knew national independence is meaningless if you can't support yourself or your family. On the ashram, we had no economic distinctions and lived a radically simple life. We all did chores together. From working in the vegetable garden to cleaning the toilets, and we sat on the ground to eat and to study and to talk. When we went to meals, nobody served us, and we brought our own plates, bowls, cups, and utensils and washed them afterward. Nobody felt deprived because we all experienced the same conditions. Babaji understood that most of us need very little to be happy. We get in trouble when we start comparing ourselves to others and think that what they have is better and maybe worth fighting to get. Babaji saw that ending economic disparities would be a huge step in reducing violence in the world. You can't preach nonviolence, as my grandfather did, without also recognizing the anger that gets stirred by inequality. Babaji tried to keep his life simple, but he also met with some of the most important people in the world. In 1930, he traveled to London to attend the first roundtable conference organized by the British government to discuss the future of India. As always, he was wearing the hand-spun, hand-woven clothes called khadi that he encouraged as a way of helping the poorest rural farmers. The khadi movement had taken hold and was beginning to have an effect on the British textile industry. Since many Indians were showing stirrings of independence by making their own khadi, the British could no longer buy all the cotton in India at cheap prices and then sell it back as expensive machine-made clothing. The participants at the round table were invited to Buckingham Palace, and my grandfather arrived wearing his loincloth and shawl. Royal aides fretted that this wasn't proper attire to meet the king, but Babaji just smiled and said that if King George didn't want him as he always dressed, he wouldn't end. Reporters heard about the story and couldn't get enough of it. Gandhi to go to King's party in loincloth blared one headline. They loved the idea that he would be walking across the crimson carpets of the Buckingham Palace in khadi and well-worn sandals. King George came in wearing the daytime formal dress of a morning coat and striped trousers, while Queen Mary stood by in a shimmering silver tea gown. When he was asked if he felt undressed wearing a loincloth in the presence of the king, Babaji formally quipped, "The king had enough on for both of us." Babaji didn't think it was wrong to want economic success. He just thought it was wrong not to lift others up with you. He didn't care about money for himself, but he was realistic and knew that his projects need funding. So he came up with a plan. Whenever he went out, thousands of people asked for his autograph. His prayer services embraced everybody, so there were often throngs of Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and Buddhists in attendance who admired him and wanted his signature. He realized that he'd be charged the small fee of 5 rupees, less than a dime today, for every autograph. He could raise money for his social and educational programs. The first time I went on a trip with my grandfather, I was given the job of collecting the autograph books and money and bringing them to Babaji in a bundle to Sai. I was thrilled. I felt very important to be close to Babaji and doing something for a bigger purpose. In those days, before selfies and cell phone cameras, autographs of famous people were very special and some were quite valuable. So after a few days of collecting, I decided I too wanted to get my grandfather's autographed. But I had no money, and I didn't know if Babaji would make an exception for me. I told myself that because I had been helping him a lot, there was no harm in trying. I collected pieces of colored paper, cut them to the size of an average autograph book, and stapled them together. That evening after prayers, I slipped my little untidy book into the stack I took to my grandfather. Then I stood by as he began signing the books, hoping that in the rush of the moment he wouldn't notice anything amiss. No way. Grandfather was absolutely meticulous about every dime he received. He needed money to do his work. When he came to my book and saw no money accompanying it, he paused. Why is there no money for this autograph? Because it is in my book, Babaji, and I don't have any money. He smiled. So, are you trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Why do you need an autograph? Because everyone has one, I answered. Well, as you can see, everyone pays for the autograph. But Babaji, you were my grandfather, I pleaded. I am glad to be your grandfather, but a rule is a rule. If everyone has to pay, you have to pay too. No exceptions for anyone. My ego was hurt. I wanted to be special. So I blurted out, you'll see, Babaji, I will make you give me an autograph for free. I'll keep trying no matter how long it takes. Is that so? Babaji's eyes twinkled and he laughed. Let's see who wins this challenge. The game was on. In the weeks that followed, I used every strategy I could think of to pester him into giving me an autograph. My favorite technique was to burst into the room when he was in meetings with high officials and world leaders and wave my book at him, asking him to sign. One day I ran into a meeting, loudly announcing that I need his autograph right then. Instead of getting angry, he pulled me to his chest, put his hand on my mouth, and kept the discussion going. The important politician he was speaking with looked stunned, not knowing what to make of our scene. I thought grandfather would give in just to keep things calm, but I should have known better than to challenge a man who'd taken on the United Kingdom. Our competition continued for several weeks. One of Babaji's high-level guests became so irritated by my interruptions that he essentially took up my cause. Why don't you just give him the autograph so he will leave and stop annoying us, he asked, exasperated. Babaji wouldn't let him set the agenda for our relationship. This is a challenge between me and my grandson, he replied calmly. You need not to get involved. Babaji never lost his temper or ordered me out of the room. He had immense control over his anger in spite of my attempts to provoke him. On one occasion, to pacify me, he wrote Bapu on a slip of paper and said, "Here is your autograph." That is not good enough, I declared. It's all I can give, he said with the same persistence he showed in everything. I was starting to understand his message. After a few more days, I realized that I was never going to get the autograph for free, and I finally stopped hounding him. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt proud. I knew that our little contest hadn't really been over a scrawl of ink. Instead, Babaji was giving me a lesson in value. Since he had decided that his signature was worth 5 rupees, it should be worth that to everyone. If he gave it away to me for free, he was lessening his own value. Equally important, our challenge showed me that even if I didn't have 5 rupees, I had great value. My grandfather was willing to treat me with the same respect he paid heads of state. He didn't undermine me in front of them or treat me as a distraction. My needs were as real as theirs and as worthy of attention. Though he never gave me his autograph, Babaji offered a much greater gift. He started spending any hour every day with me, talking and listening. He had such a busy schedule, I didn't know how he could manage to fit in, but it turned out that with disciplined habits, you can accomplish a lot more than you can imagine. Babaji had me write out my own schedule, including study time, playtime, ashram chores, and prayer, and put it on the wall to show that each minute in my life too was valuable. Babaji helped me see that each person has special value. He exuded love and respect for everyone, young and old, poor, rich and poor. I came to understand how important it is to appreciate our own worth as individuals. We sometimes worry that other people are better than we are, and we forget to see that what it is that makes us valuable to the world. Once we feel confident in ourselves, we can recognize and honor the value of those around us, regardless of social stature or the power attributed to them by worldly standards. Some scholars of my grandfather's life have portrayed him as being against progress and money, but that is misreading of his values. He valued money for what it could do to end misery and help people out of desperate situations. But he didn't consider money the measure of a person's worth. He would never, ever think someone wearing expensive clothes and flying first class was more important than someone clothed in rags and sleeping under a bridge. I've seen a photo of my grandfather and his simple Kadi shawl meeting heads of state from around the world. The royal leaders are decked out in ornate uniforms and shiny jewels and huge hats. Frankly, they're the ones who look silly to me. Babaji didn't need an elaborate costume to let the world know of his worth. If you use money and material gain to define your value, you may end up feeling hollow. I feel sorry for someone who tries to impress me with his premium car or oversized house, because I know that he feels something missing at his core. No amount of acquired stuff is going to fill that emptiness. On the other hand, I too often see people who think of themselves as failures because they get fired from a job or have been struggling to make a rent payment. They fear that wealthier friends look down on them and they are embarrassed not to have more. We need to separate our self-worth from the stuff we have acquired. Successful people who earn big salaries have every right to be proud of what they've accomplished, but they make a mistake if they think the size of their bank account is a reasonable measure of their worth. In fact, it can be just the opposite. Materialism and morality have an inverse relationship, but what you believed, when one increases, the other decreases. He didn't mean that it was immoral to earn money, or there was something inherently honorable about being poor. He objected only to focusing on material gain to the exclusion of everything else. If money means something to you, then go ahead and work hard and make a lot of money. But always remember there is a next step beyond that. Some of my own children and grandchildren have taken up the family cause of nonviolence and helping others. Our family now includes activists and professionals of all sorts, and I am very proud of all of them. My grandson in India is a lawyer who works to rescue trafficked girls, and my grandfather has been using video journalism to highlight little-known organizations doing good work in Indian villages. In America, one grandson is a caring and hardworking doctor, and I am equally admiring of another grandson who is the managing director of a well-known investment company in Los Angeles. He gets a bigger paycheck than I have ever dreamed of, but he is also showing signs of being very charitable and understanding his obligations to the bigger world. As I said, you can't use money as a measure of a person's worth in either direction. Bapuji understands that many important things like eradicating poverty and discrimination and giving people better health care require infusions of money. He would never take anything for himself, but he was unabashed in asking for support for his causes. So I tried to use that model when I first came to the United States and had the idea to launch an institute for nonviolence. My Wi-Fi, Sunanda, and I talked about it. And the more we imagined the workshops, seminars, and lectures we could offer, the more excited we became. We thought it would make sense to have the institute on a university campus, and I revoked to a number of university presidents telling them about that plan. Not one of them answered. Maybe they thought the idea was too far-fetched, or they just threw the envelope unopened into the wastebasket. Finally, a colleague connected me to the president of Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee. I went to meet him, and he enthusiastically offered us a rent-free home and office space on campus. Wonderful. I was thrilled, even though he made it very clear that the university didn't have the money to fund the institute. We'd have to do that ourselves. I accepted without knowing how my dream would play out. I stayed awake many nights trying to figure out how I could get the money I required. I had images of my grandfather holding his cloth sack out the train window to collect for his good causes and charging 5 rupees for his autograph. And it suddenly occurred to me that it's something very valuable, a stack of his original handwritten letters tucked away in a box in the house. The letters had been written to my parents and to us children. Copies had already been given to the Indian government, but the originals were deteriorating because I didn't have the means to properly preserve them. Should I be sentimental and just hold on to them until they completely fell apart? That seemed wrong. I knew they would be valuable to a museum or a collector, and selling them would give me money to promote the cause of nonviolence. To the question, what would Bapuji do? The answer seemed obvious. I got in touch with Christie's auction house, and they sent me an estimate of $110,000. Now the dream was becoming real. A dear friend and legal advisor helped me register the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence as a charitable organization of 501c3. I didn't want anybody to think I would be using even a cent of the proceeds for myself, so I asked Christie's to auction the letters and transfer the money directly to our brand new institute. The sale was announced, and that night my phone in Mississippi rang at 2 a.m. I groggily answered and was stunned to hear the office of the President of India on the other end.